Would you do me the honours of recording with this? Because this should be streaming, but it's a bit erratic, so I don't know if it's going to do it. So just to make sure that we've got it, we could do it with this as well, yeah? Or do you want to do it the other way around?
You're going to start it from the top.
Well, you decide if you want to, which one you want to deal with. Okay, we should be live now, but we've lost all the audience. Let's just see if they come back. This is now on, so basically just...
Is it recording?
Hang on. You basically just need to hold it, yeah? You can put it down if you like, down onto the ground. Right, can you confirm this is the right way round? Stephen West. Can you confirm it's the right way around? Because we had it the wrong way around for God knows what reason. Is the quality okay? Is the sound okay? Is the stream okay? If you can just confirm that, someone who's watching, then we'll be set. And we're going to do a separate recording. This should record separately onto an... All good, I'm told. All good. Well, that's great. Okay, we're going to move over.
Oh, are we going that way?
Yeah. We're going to get going, yeah. Right. Adam, your presence is requested. How you doing, mate? Right, this is us here. Wait. Just put everything down and then we get started on that. Let me just do a quick piece with Adam, just so we know what we're doing, and then let me do it with Adam first of all, and then we'll do it. So we're on, aren't we? Yeah, we're on, aren't we? That should be fine. Yeah. So obviously the migrant issue has been a big issue in the news this week. Adam, Soldier Adam, has been at the events in Epping himself, putting out streams and stuff. I did dispute with him some of the stuff that he put out, and I thought we could have a bit of debate, because there's not much debate between people about these issues, and I think that would be a good idea. So Adam, just to get your credentials, a little bit about your background for those who don't know you.
I'm Adam. I'm a native of Epping, near Epping, between Epping and Harlow. And Heiko's kindly asked me to talk about what's happening there at the moment. And it's globalist news. It's about the problem about the so-called Bell Hotel, which is at the end of Epping. And basically what's happened there in the last fortnight, a 14-year-old has been allegedly raped. Someone's in custody on indecent assault charges. Pleading not guilty, and basically what has come out of this, that hotel has been under scrutiny for some time. My local councillor highlighted it a couple of years ago.
Not too much detail, just a bit about yourself, because we can come out with this when
my
talking.
background is psychiatry, mental health, and I'm interested in I'm a civil liberties campaigner, and I believe in freedom. I believe that friends should disagree, and I believe that as Bertrand Russell said, the greatest freedom a person can have is the freedom to change their minds. Okay,
and you were a soldier, weren't you?
I was in the British Army for 3 years during the Falklands War. I'm not proud of it, and that's a bit about me. I don't know how much you want.
How long have you been coming to Speaker's Corner?
I've been coming here off and on since 1977. I remember Lord Barker. We won't talk about it.
Yeah.
That's a subject for another day. But he's been a great friend to me. I think Oscar Wilde called this a university for the working class at one time. Not anymore. It's a monkey house these days.
So just quickly, those who don't know me, just you're going to hold the bottom. My name's Heiko. I've been speaking to Speaker's Corner since end of 1985. I'm a Marxist. I advocate for socialist ideas. Unlike many of the Marxists, I was opposed, or I became opposed to the lockdowns, and I have some kind of unique positions in relation to that. Anyway, I'm known at Speaker's Corner for standing up for civil liberties and rights, and also for open debate. I don't mind debating pretty much anyone. And so, because I saw Adam posting stuff about the migrant conflict in Eping, and I know this is a very sharp debate, and not a lot of people are debating. They're just taking stands one side to the other. I thought it's important for. Well, as soon as I saw Adam, I thought, great, we can have a debate. So I think that's what we can do. Perhaps we can set some parameters as to how to organise this debate. Perhaps you can introduce the subject matter as you saw it on the platform. For how long should we say? 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes?
Do you want me to say a bit what's been happening?
Say what you think about what's been happening, and then I can. Hang on, on the platform, yeah.
Okay.
Can do it as a platform speech, yeah.
Okay.
So let's say 3-4 minutes each at the beginning. We don't have to be too strict about it, but if it gets a little bit heated, perhaps we get a bit more strict about it, yeah?
Sure.
So we each have a little bit of time to say what
So
we
there's
want to
some
do.
ground rules.
Yeah, well, so just so if we need to, we can impose some sort of. If we need to, we say
We've
2
been in
minutes
more
each or
heated
something like that.
situations.
If it gets heated, which it might do, not just because of you and me, but some of the crowd might get heated about it. So perhaps we can do it something. Start off like just pure civility, and then we'll move on to more like rigorous organisation if we need to. Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So do you want to start?
Okay.
Because you're the person with the direct experience.
Okay. Yeah. I hope my cerebral function is probably okay.
Right.
Yeah, so basically I've been asked to say a little bit about having been a native of Epping for some time. What's happening there at the moment is got rather ugly this week because they brought in the TSG this week, the so-called TSG, which are the heavy mob of the police, because there's been multiple arrests following not attacks on the Bell Hotel, but because there was a 14-year-old allegedly raped. There's a guy in custody who'd been in the country for 8 years. Residents of Epping are obviously concerned about their children because apparently this hotel, which I live quite near, is next to a school and they're constantly harassing kids. My local councillor tried to have the hotel shut down a few years ago, but Holly Whitbread, the Tory councillor, who's going to be booted out of the next election, thank God, tried to have him arrested for merely highlighting the problem of the Bell Hotel. But things have got rather nasty now. There's a massive police presence down there today, which is why I've come up here. I've had enough of it. The news has gone global. But if I might say a bit about the attitude from the people of Epping, it's a primarily working class place. You've got 1 or 2 big houses there, but the people of Epping do see this, and I'm sure Heiko will agree, as a class issue. They're saying that they would not put so-called migrants in Totteridge or Westminster. They're dumping them on the doorstep of the Epping residents because they know that they're the working class and they can accuse them of the classic wasteism. They can all be accused of being racist because they're doing that. But if you look at these terminologies that they're using now, as Piers will know, these terms and labels I'm very much against. Piers, I'm sorry you won't mind me saying, you may be a former member of the International Marxist Federation. Piers has been called a fascist. Piers has been called a Nazi or whatever. So these labels anyone can do. Basically, labelling things is a way of shutting down conversation. I think it's rather sad when they do that. But the tempers are very, very high in Epping. And this week, the council has voted unanimously to shut down the hotel, the Bell Hotel in Epping. How they're going to do that, it's got to be debated in Parliament first of all. How they're going to do that, I don't know, because they will say, hold on a minute, you're going to move them from Epping into another area so they become someone else's problem. So this is an ongoing issue, and now it is spreading to Canary Wharf. It was no coincidence the other night when I saw mattresses being delivered to Canary Wharf. What could this be for? Potentially the residents of the Bell Hotel in Epping. And might I say, it's not nice being a psychic. I would say I prefer the term economic migrants. I think these people are economic migrants. They may come from war zones, they may not. But as I can tell you, having worked in prison over the years, every prisoner, every no, I wasn't. These people who basically have got their own social worker and their own lawyer, and like if you know solicitors, they don't care how long the case goes on, because the British taxpayers is paying for the bill for it, so they do not care. So it's the same with the Bell Hotel. They've all got their own lawyer and own social worker. They are being exploited by the system. And I personally, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, I resent that taxpayers' money is being used to line the pockets of hotel owners getting rich. And the big debate now is, once they've shut down that hotel, now it's going to be shut down, is do the hotel owners continue to be paid by the taxpayers' money, or do they just stop there? This is a massive hotel. It used to be a nice hotel. I've been in there. There used to be a lovely grand piano in there. There was a nice ballroom and lounge in there. These hotel owners have realised they can make more money out of the taxpayers than they can out of having legitimate tourists staying in Epping, so that they can go there and go into and out of London. Have I said enough? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Adam, everybody.
Yeah, very.
Haiko,
So this issue, I'm not disputing, is a big issue, and it's not just British, it's an international issue. You can start out with looking at the global perspective on it, and then you can also look at the local perspective on it. So from the point of view of Adam and of people in the local community, some other people I know in Norwich and elsewhere have been protesting about these things, and they're complaining that there are sections of the migrant community or asylum seekers who are put up in hotels in these communities. Just avoid that for now, as I said. And asylum seekers who they feel are a threat to their children or to their community. And whenever there's an assault of some kind or other, they focus on that and say this is an assault. Actually, as I understand it, it's not a rape allegation. The allegation is that it's an Afghan who tried to kiss a girl.
Yes.
Right?
It was an
That's
Ethiopian.
An Ethiopian Christian who tried to kiss a girl, apparently.
Only him for 8
Now,
days.
there are other people, 8 days, not 8 years, 8 days. So a short period of time arrived and carried out, is alleged to have carried out some kind of abuse against them. It's natural that people who are unfamiliar arriving in a community, particularly in the circumstances where they're undocumented, because a lot of people when they arrive on boats throw away their passports to arrive here, that they would be regarded, one, with a certain fear in communities which are predominantly white working class communities. There will be a natural, whether it's right or not, certain fear of those type of people arriving. What, you don't think there is?
Well, no, it's like, you know, I mean, this country has been hugely welcoming to diverse nations around the world. It's like, you know, it's been something people have been proud of in this country. I don't think it's a natural. I mean, there's a natural sort of like fear of the other to some degree. But what's been going
when
on?
I say natural, okay, what I'm saying,
like, you know, orchestrated dumping of masses of men into certain communities without any liaison.
You can quibble about the word natural, but this is what you say dumping. That's effectively the same thing. People from a community these people are not familiar with, who they might be a little bit scared of, who appear in their community and they don't trust what the authorities have done in putting them there. And there's a lot of talk in certain circles about fighting age men arriving in England, right? There's a lot of talk about that. I don't think that there's any validity to the idea that this is specifically fighting age men, although they may be. I think the essence of the question is for someone to arrive at Calais and be able to get on a boat at Calais, and they've moved from, let's say, Libya or Turkey in order to cross across the continent of Europe to try to enter into Britain, they clearly have to be relatively physically fit and strong to be able to make it to Calais, to be able to get over here. Why do they come to England? A lot of the complaints that take place in Britain are about them coming to England having already got to France, because it is true that they can claim asylum in France, but they don't claim asylum in France. They go on a boat, come to England, having paid criminal gangs to come to England. That's all true. Anybody wants to make out that some Farage talk, it's not. It is factually true. Now, having got over to Britain and claiming asylum, it means that they already know that there are certain rights that they have when they arrive here that enable them to eke out an existence or make an existence in Britain, which includes housing, includes some healthcare provision, includes food, and includes some social security. And therefore there is an attitude stoked up by certain people, which is that these are parasites arriving in Britain and squeezing the system when people in Britain themselves don't receive the same things. They also argue that once you get an asylum claim through, having gone through that system, that you get priority on housing and priority on so, which certainly is, you will get a point in the point system for social housing, you will get higher points than, for example, if I went to apply for housing, I will get lower points than a successful asylum seeker. So then the question comes, what constitutes an asylum seeker? Now, in many countries, the regulation on asylum, just one second. Regulations on asylum, I'll take you one second. Regulations on asylum seekers as such, if you arrive and you have a genuine fear of persecution, you can claim your asylum seeker. And there will be people at Speaker's Corner, I've been friends and I've supported many asylum seekers in the past claiming asylum in Britain, particularly Iranians. I have many friends from Iran who claimed asylum here under the mullahs because they were leftists or whatever. I helped asylum seekers from Chile and many other countries in the past. Now, so it's about what the general attitude, I think, developing is about the idea that because the conditions are not great for the British population, that why should anybody be privileged in arriving here and receiving what they consider to be superior rights to the indigenous population who are here, right? Regardless of what nationality the people who are here already are. So I looked up this morning, just quickly, what the rights are for people to travel. So for example, if you're an Afghan, you don't basically have any right to come to England. You can't get on a plane and come to England. If you're from, let's say, America, or you're from Brazil, or you're from Italy, or you're from China, your rights to come to England are far, far higher. It's almost impossible for an Afghan to legitimately come to Britain. So any migration process involves the regulations at the border that control your access to immigration. The migrants who arrive on boats are a tiny proportion of those people who arrive in Britain. In the last few years, and I looked this up because people raised it with me, when people in Britain, particularly mostly the indigenous white population in poorer communities, I'm aware you wanted to ask them, when they voted for Brexit, and I didn't vote for Brexit, peers did, other people did, I voted against Brexit, mainly for the reason I support free movement. And I support free movement as a generic principle for the entire planet. But the reality, of course, is there is no country in the world that has open borders for everyone. There is no such country. Such a country would be a country that says literally anyone can enter their country, stay as long as they like and move as long. And most people in the world accept the idea that there must be some restrictions on access and movement between people. And even if you didn't support that idea, even if you said that there should be no restriction on the passport of people coming, obviously there is an economic criteria to be able to move. You have to have enough money to be able to move to another country, buy a ticket, get food, clothing, shelter. And therefore the economic migration element is the central question. I think it's probably more common for people to migrate because of economics than it is to migrate because of politics or upheaval. It should, however, also be pointed out that the overwhelming majority of asylum seekers in the world are housed in poor countries, not in wealthy countries, in poor countries like Turkey, like Africa, like Libya. All the people who are arriving into Italy are coming from Libya. And they're coming from Libya in conditions where they've moved across Africa, across the Sahara, in dangerous conditions to get to Libya. And that's why you'll find that a lot of these people, when they arrive in Britain, they just have a, fuck you attitude. I don't care. I've already come all this way. I've come from Libya. I crossed over the Sahara. I crossed over the boat to Italy. I walked or transported illegally or by whatever means I could across Europe. I got to France. I stayed in a camp. I managed eventually to get across the border by a boat after 4 attempts. I don't give a fuck what anyone says for me to get over here. I've got here, I'm okay now. And a lot of them, they've shown pictures on telly the last few days or on the internet. People have been posting videos and saying, yeah, but they've got a job. Well, a lot of them, they're trying to get by and survive and settle, if possible, as best they can. And of course they're going to look for jobs and try and make money. Of course they're going to do that. Anybody in their circumstance would try to do that.
Right.
As to sexual abuse allegations, it is perfectly true that amongst the Afghans, it's said to be the case, the statistics say, 22 times more likely to be charged with some sexual offence than the rest of the norm. So there is a cultural phenomena that in some communities, particularly, let's say Afghanistan, don't forget this, when you say that statement, don't forget this, Afghanistan has been attacked and bombed by Britain again and again and again.
That's right.
I met people in Pakistan have something like a million Afghan refugees in Pakistan. And I met people in Pakistan, they knew Afghans. And they told me, listen, they said. And his friend said, of course you're a normal person. He says, I'm not a normal person. Killing and death since I was a child. All my life I've seen killing and death. So expect them to be normal people. Normal people in these circumstances. Not to any behaviour, it is to explain. In order to understand someone's behaviour, you should be able to explain that background. Now, there are people who will turn around and say, yeah, but we don't want them. Sorry, I'll take you just one more second. Yeah, but we don't want them. There are people who will turn that and say. And you say you don't want them. I do think a community like Epping or elsewhere has a right to say what is done with buildings in their environment and has a right to reject certain activities, whether it be a hotel, whether it be a knocking shop, whether it be a gambling casino, and so on. And actually, the Muslim community have been quite active in preventing certain types of activity in their own communities. I do think communities have the right to make decisions about that. The flip side to that is, after Brexit, there was a big rise in immigration, contrary to what most people expected. A huge rise in immigration, mostly from the very large numbers of those people got jobs in the National Health Service. Also Nigerians and Pakistanis. A lot of them have got, I think there is a tendency for people to see people in the subcontinent, but to blindly mix up asylum seekers with migrants in general. I think that's a subconscious reaction which has some racist background. It's not a denigration, it's a simple fact. When people see more people of a particular community that they themselves don't come from, then they can regard them with a little bit of suspicion and fear. My father is Chinese, my mother's German. In China, for example, there's a lot of fear of black people. There's a lot of racism against black people.
That's right.
In Peckham, there's a lot of Nigerians. A lot of the Nigerians in Peckham don't like the Caribbeans. In Brixton, a lot of the Caribbeans don't like Nigerians or Ghanaians. So there is nothing in and of itself unusual about having subconscious racist ideas. That is a normal thing in society. It's a normal thing historically. Yet we live in a world of increasing globalization, increasing movement of people, increasing conflicts and so on that cause movements of people. So the issue is, how do you deal with integration of different communities and with the mass migration of people that is happening not only in Britain but everywhere around the world as a consequence of war, as a consequence of economics, as a consequence of people seeking to get a better life? How do you deal with that?
Digital ID.
Sorry, 1 second. The gentleman here. Sorry, my friend. I'm really sorry that I didn't take you earlier. I'm going to stop for a minute. You can come back a little bit later on. Yeah? Adam.
Haiko, Adam.
Yeah, I think you deserve an A+ for that. I mean, how do I overcome that? Yeah, Heiko makes some very, very good points, some salient points, and I think where we all agree is having been on the anti-lockdown movement, we all agree in civil liberties. We all support the terrible things that are happening in Gaza. We want an end to that. Which is where we all agree. But sorry, okay. Basically, what's happening in Epping? What Heiko says may be true in theory, may be true and probably is true if you take it in a historical context, but the people of Epping are aware of the terrible crimes that happened in Rotherham. Rotherham, it happened in Telford, it happened all around it, courtesy of the police, those wonderful bastions of civil liberties and the police who protect civil liberty and democracy, God help us. They remember this. There's horror stories coming from Rotherham. There's horror stories coming from Telford. And it wasn't just the type of crime, it was the length of time it went on for. Samantha Smith, who was a victim of Rotherham, she had the temerity to go on the Mark Stein show. You might remember Mark Stein used to be on GB News during the lockdown, a great guy, a great journalist. She had the temerity to go on to the Mark Stein show and tell her that she'd complained about grooming, but nothing was done about it. The next day, what does she do? She gets a very impromptu visit from South Yorkshire Police. Basically, police intimidation, asking her why. Why would you go on the Mark Stein show? Because she complained about it for long. The people of Epping don't want an escalation of what happened in Rotherham, what happened in Telford. They are conscious that the police are more interested in community cohesion statistics than kids being raped, for God's sake. This is what's on their mind. And that statistic you give about 22% higher from
22 times.
22 times. It's an incredible statistic, but it's interesting in these communities. In these communities where sexuality is more suppressed, and I talk about where they wear the burqa, where you can be turned on by seeing someone's nose, for example. It's interesting that rape seems to be higher in those countries where, in more open women's sexuality, in Western society, women's sexuality, the fashion emulates the human body, as Desmond Morris might say. So, although what Heiko's saying is very, very true guys, I can't. What is very, very true in theory, but the people of Epping, this is what's on their mind. So it's not just the class issue of having them drafted into Epping and other places and hotel owners making a mint out of it. This is what's on their mind, and I can understand that, but I feel, and I've reiterate that the so-called asylum seekers, economic migrants, whatever you want to call them, I feel that they're being exploited. They'd be better off maybe in RAF Manston, where they've got a place, formerly Kent International Airport, than they would in the sleepy suburb of Epping. I'll hand over to someone.
Adam. Everything's going to be great here.
Haiko.
Okay. On the issue, an issue I took up with Adam during the course of last week was this issue about Rotherham. Rotherham, as you know, is the sort of the igniting flame for the anger around Tommy Robinson's campaigns to denigrate the Muslim community as responsible for rape gangs. And that Rotherham and Rochdale has been the means by which he has been able to advance his own political position and turn a significant section of the population into anti-Muslim and anti-Islamic orientation. And there's no doubt about that he's succeeded in doing that. It has succeeded in whipping up hatred against Muslims. Now, is it a fact that Rotherham in any way is associated with asylum seekers? Well, firstly, the Rotherham gangs, the rape gangs, the grooming gangs, they are long-standing members of the community. They run taxi firms, they run cafes, they run restaurants, and they drew a layer of children in care homes into their ambience. So one side is
the care homes are not taking enough care over the children they're watching over. Second thing is, the grooming gangs are able to get access to them and to manipulate those children. Third thing is that the community officials who should be defending the rights of those children are not involved or are scared of causing racial conflict within the community, and they're all are complicit and involved. Now,
which Robinson did expose.
Yes. Now, rape gangs are not new in Britain. Grooming gangs are not new in Britain. There have been rape gangs organised by the Catholic Church over decades, possibly centuries.
That's right.
When I was at school in London in the 1960s and 70s, there were grooming gangs in nearly every public or grammar school in Britain. Even in secondary modern, I went to a secondary modern, there were some paedophiles operating as teachers inside the school. And it was a culture of paedophilia inside a layer of the teaching profession, and in particular in public schools. So Eton, almost every public school in Britain had a grooming gang scandal. Eton, Harrow, a friend of mine went to Slindon College in Sussex, which was run by a grooming gang. I remember going to the school with my friend. He invited me to go and visit one day, and the head teacher had a group of 12 and 13-year-old boys in his room, smoking cigarettes, drinking and watching television. He would encourage them by watching pornography to have sex with each other, and then once they'd done that, drag them into a network of paedophile abuse throughout the whole period of their schooling. This was within the public sector. Oh, sorry, not the public sector, the public schools. In other words, for those who are unfamiliar, within the private schools in Britain. The Church of England was also notorious, as also were the Cub Scouts, for manipulating children into sexual abuse. So there is nothing that is per se racialized about sexual abuse. What is the distinction is the same thing about fears, is that since the Tommy Robinson, or better said, the grooming gang scandal in Rochdale and Rotherham came to the fore and was exposed largely, or partly at least, due to the work of Tommy Robinson and his allies, it became a racialized question. Then it became not only racialized, but also turned into a religious question. So they made out these were, I've been reading Tommy Robinson's latest book, which he didn't write, but it's got his name on it, and it mixes up the idea of rape gangs, Pakistani communities involved in rape gangs, and Islam. So he then turns it from Pakistani layers of the Pakistani community who are manipulating and grooming children and raping them to Muslim rape gangs. And then he turns it, and if you read through the book, it begins to shift. Firstly, from Pakistani, secondly, from grooming gang onto Muslim. And then eventually they start using the word Muslim rape gangs, rather than, and in actual fact, of course, there is no support in Islam for raping children. There's no support in Islam. These people, according to any genuine Muslim, are criminals and are not Muslims. But of course, the point is that they need to whip it up to make out they are Muslim rape gangs. Unfortunately, what we have is a combination of genuine problems of integration between communities, genuine crises of shortage of housing, provision and resources, both for the children who suffer and for those who arrive in Britain and live in various, live as migrant communities. There are problems in all these areas, exacerbated by the economic crisis in society, not only in Britain but internationally, and exacerbated by the wars and by the global conflicts. That creates. Well, there are also deliberate policies as a consequence of the fact that the European population does not reproduce. They don't have children. They don't. Name me a country in Europe where they have a significant number of children. In Italy, hang on, in Italy,
Europeans migrated to America.
In Italy and in Spain, one second, in Italy and in Spain, where traditionally people had 3 or 4 children. Now the birth rate does not equal even one point whatever.
No Western
Sorry?
country reproducing.
What's that? What's that?
Yes. It's been
Well, in
delivered-
actual fact,
delivered down
it's not a
from
salary question. In actual fact, no, it's not, because the poorest countries in the world are those with the highest birth rates. The poorest countries in the world have the most children. The wealthiest countries in the world have the least children. So it is a demographic associated with the dynamics of modern capitalism. That when people get wealthier, they have less children. That's a fact. Or, well, tell me the country, wealthy country, where they have loads of children.
None.
Compare it with Somalia or India or Pakistan. It's normal.
They will have many certain parts of
Yes,
affluent America, certain parts of affluent
In
society.
some parts, in
They
some
will have
parts.
many children. 6,
In
7, 8
some
children,
parts
10 or 12.
of America, there are religious communities who have large numbers of children. Where? Where?
Look at what's his name. Who's the top guy?
Boris Johnson.
No, one of his cabinet children is
It is a simple fact that
got
the
6
white
kids.
population of Europe, on average, have very few children, and therefore, from the standpoint of capitalist economics, you want to have people producing wealth who are of the age of working, and in order to do that, to gain profits, because the only profits in society, contrary to what we are told, come from people working, come from people making wealth, and therefore, because the Brits do not reproduce, nor do the Germans, nor do the French, nor do the Italians, nor do the Spanish, nor do the Hungarians. Some of the Poles do, but even they are cutting down on numbers. Consequence of that is the governments, the capitalist governments of Europe, have had a policy for a long period of time to migrate people from other countries into Europe in order to fill the labour gap inside society. That is policy. That is policy. Yes, without the agreement of the population. But that is policy. And yes, it has. Yes. Because the global capitalist institutions attempt to regulate global capitalism by organising regulation to migrate people from one corner of the world to another. Sorry?
Do you watch women's football? Finals on?
No, I don't watch it. I watch it. Where's Adam gone? Adam, sorry, I've been speaking a long time. Adam should get up and say what he thinks. But the point I was making, and I said to you online, is the robber and rape gangs are not the same thing, and it's conflating and confusing to mix up the rape gangs with the migration of asylum seekers. It shouldn't be done, and those who are doing that, I think, are stoking up false fears and hatreds in society.
Haiko, Adam, very good. Yeah, and I don't know what sort of school you went to, but I mean, roughly, I went to an Essex school, but it sounds quite interesting watching pornography.
I went to a state school. Secondary modern state
What's the
school.
sex education license? Sex education lessons. They must be very, very interesting. But basically, yeah. What Heiko's saying is very, very true about cultural issues, cross-cultural issues. Some of the people that are walking around Epping, as I say, the simple fact remains, from a pragmatic point of view, the people that are coming out of that hotel, numerous ones, are from a different culture, where they see the local English ladies, where I mean, I understand, I know it's true that the age of consent in Saudi Arabia apparently is 7 years of age. Apparently in Somalia there is no age of consent.
There's hardly any Saudi asylum seekers, are there?
Babies, it's
It's a very rich place after all.
Is that what you're
But
suggesting?
what you're saying is very, very true. But the fact remains now the hotel, the council have decided unanimously to shut that hotel down. But what a lot of other councils are now going to say, they're quite likely to say is, hold on a minute, you shut down the one in Epping, but you're now going to deport them to our area, so they become our problem. This is what's going to happen now. This is the reason Holly Whitbread and her father on Epping Council, who by the way are delaying elections because they know they're going to be booted out by Nigel Farage in the next election. This is the reason that hotel has stayed there so long, and it's got to boiling point. It's what's known in psychology as the boiled frog theory, or the normalcy theory, where the frog swims around and around and around, eventually gets to the point, I'm boiled to death. What's happened in Epping has been the boiled frog theory. Now, integration, as we know, takes a long, long time. I'm sure when the Normans invaded Britain, they had a massive impact on our language, but only a few thousand Normans stayed. But the Normans were responsible in many ways for creating the class system. Even in British establishments today, a lot of people in the army and in education, they had Norman names, de Belliere, La Majorier. The Anglo-Saxons had a terrible time under Norman Britain, which is why predominantly today Anglo-Saxon names, Smith, Browns, etc., are predominantly the bottom of the pile. So what I'm saying is integration takes years, if not centuries, of feudal civil wars, etc., etc. The last civil war we had here was in the 60s. What's your point? This is taking. Look, if you've got an English, you can speak afterwards. Yeah? There's a difference in asking a question, just making it silly or not. Basically, so then what I'm saying, if that's anything to go by, but the Anglo-Saxons did keep they kept the legal system after the Norman conquest. But that's my point. Basically, all this is very well and good from class analysis, but the British people are a secular people. I mean, they're not a religious people. I think in last census, only 1%, despite me being of an Anglican background, only 1% of the English people go to church. They're not a religious people. So there is a religious point with them. When they see people walking around in pious religious relics and attire, they get a little bit afraid.
It's really great that you've been supporting people in Epping. I wanted to ask about the policing in Epping, because I've seen some absolutely horrendous, shocking, deeply shocking, where you get police driving in vans into protesters, and it's like seen as nothing. Well, these are white racists, so we can just run them over. I mean, I am shocked. If they were doing that against people in like Extinction Rebellion or XR or these other groups or Antifa, there'd be absolute uproar. There's white protesters.
You see, there's not only the issue that Farage, like Haiko brought up about Antifa being escorted to and from Lincoln Station.
They weren't.
They it was for their own safety.
They were escorted away.
They were
But let me tell you what.
They were escorted. They weren't bastard.
Yeah, but Tommy Robinson was escorted into the park here as well by 50 police.
Well, there you go.
But what I will say is I witnessed Essex police driving into people. There was one policeman driving a van, and I was banging on the window saying, "Stop, you're going to hit a toddler." And then she sped away in a panic and knocked 2 other people down. And if you don't believe me, Jamie Maguire, who is the local Reform councillor, had to perform first aid on the victim. I have photographs of the victim. So in many ways, as Farage said, this riot was caused by police.
Yes.
They panicked. I've been a soldier. Anyone that's done crowd control, no, you do not antagonise people. You do not get the worst. The people that are the police that are in Epping. Let me speak. Your comments are not.
How many people did they drive?
Basically.
How many people did they drive?
Let him finish.
Sam, I think I want you to shut
Let him
up.
finish.
Basically, the people were and people got angry, and that's why they started kicking the police vans and breaking windows. The police will not tell you this. We know police aren't exactly known for their honesty, don't we?
Yeah.
Either of etc. etc. We know the tyranny that the police will enforce during the lockdowns. They will enforce any
Bunch of
tyranny.
Nazis, the police, man.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. So basically, there's a lot that won't tell you, and the riots, everything came from that. So again, the people of Epping, there's been some horrific injuries. There's been multiple arrests. One police officer had used his shield as a weapon to knock a guy's teeth out. You don't do that. If you're an occupying force and you want to get the TSG basically took over from the so-called SPG, who killed a guy in Blair Peach, who's a Maori guy who they killed. So they but they're no better. They're walking around like they will be at the Notting Hill Carnival next one in quasi-military fatigues, like they're expecting a war.
Yes.
These are not police.
Yes.
This is the military wing of the state, for God's sake.
Yes.
You don't need to do that. If you want to get on the right, you have some humility. You get on the right side of people. At the moment, the protesters outside the building are locked in like animals. They're locked in like caged animals up there, waiting for the TSG. Who want to punch up? They love a punch up the TSG until they meet their match. Then they know, as we know. So that's my point. What Heiko's saying is very well and good in theory, but people have fears. We're all frightened by what we don't understand. We're all frightened by what we don't understand. I remember when I was very young in Newbury Park, I saw Sikhs for the first time, and in those days they used to go around selling like fabric. And I remember running back to my nan's bungalow crying because I'd never seen a Sikh before. It fucking frightened the crap out of me, you know. So people are frightened by what they don't understand, but the English are not a religious people, and they see people walking around in pious religious regalia and they get frightened by it. I beg to move at this point.
Adam, everybody. Heiko Coop.
I think we're coming towards it. So, I just want to say the following.
Just stop it.
So, I think you have to look at the precise details rather than escalate the crisis as it happens. Second thing is, I think you have to be aware that it's perfectly true that the Tommy Robinson Brigade have been banging on about Muslim rape gangs for 10 years.
It's
And
nasty,
it has a certain echo in certain communities. And the consequence of that is that
Funded to do that.
because there are some people, some international forces, as you pointed out, there are international forces supporting global migration into the European countries. There are forces who are also manipulating genuine fears within the indigenous populations of Europe of migrants coming in and turning them against them, even though the overwhelming majority of migrants are peaceful and prepared to integrate with the communities they live in. Even though that's the case, Tommy Robinson and co, backed by Israel, are seeking to create. It's an international campaign, and we'll see this in September when Tommy Robinson's free speech event takes place in London. It will be with global speakers backed by Steve Bannon, Jordan Peterson, Elon Musk and other players who are trying to whip up hatred within the European and North American communities against Muslims on behalf of the one country that has got a global interest in whipping up hatred against Muslims and turning them into unpeople, into what the minister of one of the ministers of Israel said, human cockroaches. They're trying to dehumanize them so that when you turn on the television and you watch children starving to death on television, you are supposed to go, well, they are Muslim, they are different to us, and they are the people who supported October the 7th, undermining the Christian Judeo background of those people in Israel who are like us as opposed to like them, and that therefore what is happening in Gaza where something officially 60,000 have been killed. Actually, figures have come out in the last couple of weeks of up to 300,000 people being killed, destroyed out of the rubble by Israel, backed by England, backed by America, backed by Europe, to slaughter the people in that country. Do not believe that the internal problems exacerbated in Europe are not integrated with the global problems around the world, in particular around the conflict in Gaza. They are inextricably interconnected. So although I fully understand the fears and the response of communities around Britain, beware of who your allies are when they mobilise you and say they are the defenders of free speech. I defend the right of Tommy Robinson and his allies to speak. I defend their right to speak at Speaker's Corner, even in the face of all the Muslims at Speaker's Corner. I defend their right to organise protests and not to be charged with terrorism, etc., and not to be beaten up by the police. But in exchange, we expect that those who stand up against Israeli barbarism, those who stand up for the rights of refugees, of the legitimate refugees, those who stand up for the rights of people around the world, like those people who recently have been arrested in London and around the country for supporting a group called Palestine Action, charged with terrorism offences, completely spurious terrorism offences, because they oppose a genocide carried out with the full support of the British, French, German, European and American governments. And therefore, even though it seems abstract for me to talk about world politics when local affairs appear in front of you, in fact, they are automatically and inextricably interconnected. I can't see another way around it.
Haiko coup, everyone! Haiko coup! Haiko coup, please!
Some very, very good points. And as I say, I know some Muslims that they're not all pious. We know that. I'll keep very, very short. We know that all Muslims. There are secular Muslims. There are Muslims. There are Muslims I know that are porn stars. There are Muslims that believe in free speech. There are Muslims I know who believes that Nazis should have the free speech. Free speech should be cross borders. The psychologist Jordan Peterson said that without free speech, ideas cannot be questioned. And as I said earlier, the greatest freedom a man can have, as Bertrand Russell said, is the freedom to change his or her mind. But may I say, in the wider context of what's going on, we cannot forget the last 4 years, the World Economic Forum. The cynical part of me tells me that Starmer, behind the scene, the globalists over there, the World Economic Forum, which in my opinion should be a proscribed organisation, in a way are enjoying every minute of this. And you know why? Because if you read the Great Reset, which I have, and Schwab talks about the dismantleisation of society, all of this makes sense. Starmer is dismantling society. And what's the result? As we've seen with the online so-called Harms Act, which has done more damage to freedom of speech. Lots of people I used to enjoy watching BitChute. You can't do that now unless you have a VPN. This is a tyrannical government, and as Heiko rightly says, divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. What's happening in Epping? I think there is a quite possible potential of it being orchestrated by the globalists to give them more control. This is a tried and the Hegelian dialect, problem, reaction, solution, without being too intellectual.
Adam, I said you can't even look up porn anymore. You've got to put your face ID in and credit cards.
Unless you get a VPN.
He's done it. He gave him his face. He gave him his face.
And by the way, may I say, I've never actually watched pornography. I've only studied it.
You should do.
I've only studied it, but my study has lasted.
Research.
I don't want to digress, but what is pornography? Pornography is basically human biology. It's human biology. Man is the only animal that was on the planet. I know this next point. Man is the only animal on the planet.
Anyway, everybody, Adam, thank you. Adam, thank you.
Thank you for a lovely.
Hey, gentlemen, Piers Corbyn. Thank you.
So long, I'm going to change my battery.
Love you, brother, man. Love you, brother.